Hello and welcome back. Now, today I'd like to talk to you about a subject which fascinates me, past life regression, and also I wanted to give you some insights into how we might be able to be in a situation where we're living multiple lives at the same time, and we're unaware of the other lives going on from our current perspective. So, I'll make a start. As a linear thinking 3D model, it's often very difficult for us to grasp the concept of past lives taking place at the same time as this life, which is what I believe is actually going on. Everything's just in an instant happening, and also in addition to that, I believe that there are many parallel lives also happening in this now. Now is all that there actually is. Just we can't wrap our brains around it. It seems, impossible for all these things to be happening at the same time, and our soul, our consciousness, participating in all these different scenarios. It just ties your brain in knots trying to imagine it. And if you're thinking in that linear sense, I can understand that. But if you try and imagine it this way, I was watching some things, doing some courses at the moment, very advanced energy work courses that really are stretching my mind to understand it in the same way that this might be stretching your mind to understand. And in one of those courses, they presented how we could be living all these lives at the same time in a way that I found helped me wrap my brain around it. So I thought I'd pass it on to you and see if that helped you. Maybe it's just something to consider. These are all just ideas. Obviously, absolutely nobody knows for sure. Everyone, has information filtering down to them, coming through their intuition, through their guides, through their, science and things like that. But, we're all filtering this information to the best of our ability, and to the best of my ability and my belief, this is a possible way that system could work. Now, you remember we spoke before about how we're all little sparks of all that is, and that we sort of wanted to explore everything, and so we all flew off in different directions, and we separated ourselves into lots of different facets so that we could compare. We could have some sort of relativity to our experience, because you can't have an experience in isolation. You have to have it. You have to be taller or bigger, or denser or lighter or whatever. So you need something to compare. So we fragmented ourselves in the same way that all that is fragmented itself. And it's all these little parts of ourselves that are playing out all these different scenarios. Sometimes, in tandem with other souls. Sometimes with just ourselves. We don't actually know it. So the way this lady explained it to me was that you have this little spark of divine consciousness that is your true self, that is who you are. And this little spark is in the centre of a ball, a big round ball-like structure. And depending on which part of the outer ball the spark is regarding, that is a different life. All the different parts. So if it would look this way, the consciousness would look this way, it would see this life playing out. If it would look up, it would see that life. If it would look there, it would see a different life. And all the lives are going on at the same time in this. We see it as a ball-like structure. It's really just to let your head understand that from the centre of this stuff that's going on, everything can be going on in the now. It's all happening now. It just depends where you put your conscious mind. So even as in this body, we can link with other lives through our higher self and our soul consciousness. We can access what's happening here and in other planes of vibration, right back to the source. You know, I have done many a meditation where I have gone back to source before the splitting, or I don't know if we go there sometimes just to recharge, because it can be very draining enacting out all these scenarios. And I find whenever I meditate or whatever, and I go back to this oasis of calm and love and peace and nothing, it's really very wonderful. Anyway, in the core is this spark of source, and surrounding it are all the scenarios that are playing out, all the past lives, all the parallel lives. They're all happening all at once, and really it's just about where you look. I think it was Lynn McTaggart in The Field, the author of The Field and The Power of Eight, and she does What Doctors Don't Tell You podcasts with another very clever chap, I forget his name. She did a fantastic body of work called The Field, and I subscribed to that years ago, and in one of the articles in the newsletters that would come out, she was talking about how people looking at, say, a fish tank from a different perspective would see different things. And that's another way you can imagine it. You're looking at a large fish tank. Imagine you're in sea life or something, and you may be looking through the little windows that they have, and you're seeing a shark or an eel or a crab or whatever. And somebody else just round the corner is looking in from that perspective, and they're seeing something totally different, a big fat fish or something. And that's another way of looking at it. They're both looking at the same thing, but they're looking at it from a different perspective, and they're seeing a different aspect of it. You can sort of pick and choose, and there'll be many other ways that people approaching this subject that maybe let you just weigh it up and see if you think it might resonate as true for you. I like the ball one. That feels, I don't expect it is in a ball shape or anything like that, but the idea of being at the centre and looking out in all the different directions into all different scenarios happening at the same time, that I could take that resonates with me. Now there's another thing I want to talk about before I go into some examples of past life regression, and that is that there's a lot of stories about people, and they scoff at past life regression and say it can't be real because everybody's Cleopatra or Julius Caesar or Tutankhamun and all these different really famous people of Jesus Christ or something, so they just throw the baby out with the bathwater with regards to that, and they say that all past life regressions is just baloney and people are making it up or imagining it or whatever. Now in Dolores Cannon's books, The Convoluted Universe, she deals with this because she regresses a number of people, and in many instances she came across people who actually didn't initially when she started doing her work, it was deep level hypnotherapy for healing people. She was doing fantastic books, you must read them all, and she wanted to regress people to past lives because she felt that there could be healing from them, which is true, but in a number of cases she would regress people and they actually didn't have a past life that they had physically lived on the earth. They were actually first timers on the earth who were coming down as light workers at this time to help with raising the vibration of the planet, and they didn't have time to be living all the past lives. They wanted to just come straight in as a first timer with a working knowledge of how things functioned on the earth. We carry with us all our genetic heritage and all our memories from all the past lives which are going on in the now. We've got a vault of knowledge. People have been, down here many lifetimes. But there are also people down here who haven't had any lifetimes at all. And what they do instead is they have like a download. Now, I can put this to you in the way from the recent movie Blade Runner, the new one. In it, the robot people, they get like a download into their mind from an actual memory of somebody else, that has experienced something. It's put into the replicants so that they can, be sort of more fleshed out personalities. And it's much the same way that works with people who are first time in body. They may have been guides, they may have loads of experience of, observing the earth and helping other people, but it's first time in body, and they need a foundation knowledge for whatever it is they're setting out to do. So maybe they're going to be a doctor, or they're going to be born into the royal family, or they're I don't know, a scientist or something, and they need specific learnings that other people have had in their lifetimes. Now, all our knowledge and learnings are stored in the Akashic records, and these can be accessed by anyone in the spirit world. And as they're planning to come down onto the earth, they say, I need to know this and I need to know that, and I want to experience, being an athlete or whatever, different kind of fundamental basics of being a human being that we picked up through many lifetimes. They need it all in one. So what they do is they select worthy lives, that have gained very valuable information to their chosen path that they plan to come down with, and they imprint it onto these first time on earth people as if it were a past life memory. But they didn't in fact live that life, and that is why sometimes people will say, I was Julius Caesar or Cleopatra or whatever. It's because they have had an imprint of that life. It's like a soul group life lesson thing where they are working within an agreement with the real Cleopatra person, the soul that was actually down there living that life. So just not to be too sceptical about people's experiences, and be open to the fact that it's all good. Whatever's going on, it's all good. Bring it on, and be open to believing that there is some form of truth in everything that is being presented to you. Be open, don't be closed-minded. Make your own judgments, obviously, but that's just something to consider, if you're a bit sceptical about how that happens. Now, I'm going to read you through some quite short past life regressions, two of which I experienced, one a family member experienced, and you'll see that none of those are we anyone famous or strange in any way. They're just everyday common or garden lives. Okay, so the way I did my past lives regressions was you fully conscious. It wasn't a deep experience. You can do this on your own, I think, really, to be fair. You just picture yourself standing in a corridor, a bit like Neo with all the doors, but each door looks different. They're all, one might be wooden or whatever, or small and large and painted or golden, or there's all this huge variety of doors, and the corridor goes on for quite some way, and that's how I started it. You walk along this corridor, you choose a door, you go through the door, and you're in one of your own lives, or possibly a download, but I think I lived them all. I don't feel I was given the fast track. So it was very, very enjoyable when I did it. It wasn't scary. It was fascinating, and the thing I hadn't expected was the physicality of past life regression. You were in a different body, and you could feel the differences in that body. And it was very strange, and actually I took away something from the two that I'm going to mention here, which I remember sometimes in this body, and I think, okay, this time you're being, a little Glasgow woman, with a not perfect body, in a different lifetime you were something else. So here goes anyway. Let's see what you think. At the start of the regression, I entered a corridor. It was lined with doors on both sides, doors of all kinds of shapes and sizes, material and decoration. Some were plain wooden doors, some were studded with metal, some were huge stone doors. On and on the doors went as far as the eye could see. I was asked to choose a door. I chose a plain grey stone door. There was no latch or handle. I just pushed it and it opened. Now your soul will always lead you through a door which has something to teach you about whatever's going on in your life at that time. You might know what it is you're taking from the lifetime, but there will be something, some unfinished business or some lesson from that life, some little treasure you will bring back from it that will help you resolve issues in this time. So I don't know why I was drawn to that door past all the other fancier doors, but there must have been a purpose to it. I was asked what I could see. I immediately saw a wide cobblestone road and what looked to be a market square. I was sitting on the back of a huge black horse. It was sweating heavily and its sides were heaving. I looked at my body and it was such a shock because I was a man. In fact, I was a huge man in my prime, and to this day I remember them. I had such solid muscles and my skin was very darkly sunburned. It was like mahogany. I was very, very heavily tanned and almost shiny, to be fair. And I felt as if there wasn't an ounce of fat on my body, as if I had a lot of muscle, like maybe these really heavily trained bodybuilders, but it wasn't, an uncomfortable looking thing. It was really phenomenal physique, and I was in my prime. My legs were bare, and I had heavily muscled thighs and calves, and I could sense how hard the muscles felt, and that's true to this day. I can remember them. There was just no give in those muscles or that skin. It was very strange. It was like I'm made of wood. I wore leather sandals, which were heavily bound around my feet and ankles and were very sturdily made. That's what you find often in the past life regressions and also in my other journeyings. You pick up a lot of the detail of what people are wearing and where they are. It's a lot of very mundane stuff that you don't sort of just see the whole thing. Sometimes you just start picking out the shoes or the hands or, a material on the dress or something. So, it fills in a lot of blanks because it's quite detailed. I was dressed in a short toga with a leather breastplate strapped across my chest, with some kind of leather armour around my waist, with wide straps hanging down over my toga. I had leather cuffs tied around my wrists and up my arm to my elbow, and I wore a helmet which was partially covering my face. It was hot and sweaty inside. I did not seem to mind the heat or experience any physical aches. I seemed to be incredibly fit and strong. I was holding a sword in my right hand and I was watching the other soldiers. They were chasing down some peasants in the village. I saw a young boy. He was trying to run away, and it was our job to kill the men, but to capture the women to be used as slaves, and the young boys to be trained as soldiers for the Roman army. In my mind, I felt no shame or guilt about doing this. It was what I had been trained to do, and I can remember thinking that it was what had happened to me. I had not been born a Roman. I was a captured slave like that child I was about to run down. And I remember thinking I was proud of what I had become, although it had not been easy. Beatings were common, cold, dirty, often hungry. We had been made to work and train every day till we dropped from exhaustion, and many boys did not survive the training. But I did, and I was now a Roman, if not by blood, then by sweat. It was at that point that I came out of the regression, and I was left with this very strange feeling because of how I am in this life. It surprised me that, you know, I was such a contrast in another life, and it does make you it just makes you approach things differently when you're looking at yourself. Sometimes you just think, okay, in this lifetime I've chosen to be like this, you know, in a different lifetime I'll choose to be something different, so I am all things. So really just enjoy this for what it was I chose it for. I know it may sound a bit different, and I'm not saying I wouldn't like to be different, but I don't dislike myself anymore or beat myself up for being what I am, because it's not the whole of what I am. We're all me. We're all, you know, we're all this, and we're all the Roman soldier, and we're all the different variants that there can be. We're all the different races and sexualities, you know. We're all good some lifetimes and kind of wicked other lifetimes. So you can't really judge anybody anymore, because, you know, we're all learning the same things. We're all experiencing this. That's what it's about. It's just about experiencing different things and gaining the knowledge and the wisdom from it. It was a very powerful, I mean, I did that 15 years ago or something now, and I can see it now. I can see that boy, I can see the cobblestones, I can see looking down at myself, I can see it and I can feel it and I can be in it, even though I did that regression 15 years ago. And I'll probably never forget how I felt then. So because it was quite short, I went to another door, and this was a plain wooden door fastened with a large wooden bar across it. And I lifted the bar and entered, and I found myself, this is quite an interesting one, lying on the wooden deck of a large ship. I was trying to sleep, but I couldn't. I was lying on the floor, surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of other poor people, all packed on the deck. Some were asleep, some children were crying, others were standing at the rail looking out at the land which was approaching. I knew I was a boy, maybe 14 or 15 years old. I was poor, I had ragged clothing, I was very, very, very cold, and I had no shoes. My clothes were really thin. There was biting cold wind blowing in from the sea, and I huddled down onto the deck, hugging myself, as I had not even a scrap of a blanket. I wore a little cloth cap, and my trousers were far too short for my legs. I was not afraid, I was just very uncomfortable. And I can remember looking at the woman lying beside me. She was not related to me, she was not anyone I knew. We were strangers, but I can remember thinking how beautiful she was, even with her hair wrapped in an ugly worn scarf and an old shawl about her shoulders and a patched worn dress which was a dull shade of grey. Even in those rags, she was still beautiful. I find this difficult to write and a little bit embarrassing, but I think it does go a long way to proving that this was actually happening to me. As I previously, this is kind of awkward to talk about, but basically I felt the sensations a man would feel in that situation, and there were different sensations than how a woman would feel. I can recall it now, and it was an external type sensation of lust or whatever, and it was just wholly different from how it feels being a woman, and, you know, being attracted to someone. So it was a very strange, being a teenage boy lying on a ship next to this older woman, and having these feelings come upon me, and having them be outside what I recognise as my body. And it just was kind of extra validation that was happening, and that I was a boy and not an old lady imagining I was a boy. I felt this incredible attraction to the woman. I stared at her for a while, and I fantasised about making love to her. And to stop torturing myself, I got up and walked over to join the other people at the railings. And I immediately saw the Statue of Liberty. And I knew I was some sort of refugee coming to America with all these others fleeing war or poverty. One part of my brain was staggered when I understood I was looking at a glimpse of the past. History in the making in the early days of America's history. It's a sight I will never forget, or the emotions that I felt when I saw it. Those emotions of relief and gratitude, and awe, and happiness. It was all just this huge mixture, so much powerful emotions upon seeing that statue and knowing we'd arrived at our destination. And I did feel a welcoming, it's like I didn't feel we'd be sent back like a lot of things that go on at the moment. I felt we would be embraced, and we had reached this mother country who would take us in and transform our lives. And that's how it was back then, I don't know, a couple of 100 years ago, whenever it was. And it's a shame things are not that way anymore, that we don't, if I was this poor boy in these days, I'd probably be sent back to be slaughtered somewhere. I can still remember it vividly to this day. Now, the third story, it was a family member that we were out and we did this past life regression in a sort of psychic medium show, and I thought it was brilliant, and I'll try to remember it. It was powerful to me, and I wrote it down, and the person says they don't mind me sharing it with you. Okay, these are her words, not mine, okay? On opening her eyes and looking down, she saw these big, ugly feet which were standing in mud. The feet were attached to this tall, skinny man, and he was very ugly, with uneven teeth and a huge beak nose. He was poorly dressed in trousers which were too short and an old shirt with a worn jacket that was also too small. He was very depressed. He was standing in the fields and he knew he should go home, but he didn't want to, not anymore. He started to walk back to the cottage. It was a very small stone cottage with a straw thatched roof, and he didn't want to go in. He had nowhere else to go. He went inside and the old woman was there and she was staring at him. She hated him. He knew it. She had never liked him, but now she absolutely hated him. It was not his fault, but she had no one else to blame. The baby was there. Oh gosh, that's strange sensations in the wooden crib. Not even a boy. A stupid, weak girl. What help would she be on the farm? His wife was gone. She had died giving birth to the child. She was buried outside with a wooden cross to mark her bones. He felt lost without her. How could he manage to work the farm and care for a baby without his wife to help him? But she was gone, and only the old woman was left to take care for the baby, and she hated him. At this point, my friend came out of the regression as she felt very uncomfortable being so sad and stuck in that life which was so bleak. In this life, my friend is a very pretty, petite lady who has always had lots of compliments about her looks, always slim and beautiful and gorgeous, and she really had hoped for a different past life regression where she was some exotic beauty somewhere wonderful, and to go into this big ugly man was a real shock for her, but I'm sure there were lessons in it for her, and certain things were ignited and helped her, in this lifetime. So that's it. That was just some nice examples I've got. I did dabble in and out a few other things. It's something you can dip in and out of, past lives, just as you meditate on your own. There's lots of audio tapes and things, giving away my age, MP3s and things you can get very easily, where you can do past life regressions, and the MP3 will bring you back out of them. But I find that you can just go very lightly into your own subconscious, and you can just if you pose a question, show me a past life or something, or you put yourself in that corridor, you can actually do it and come back. You still retain your consciousness of the now, but you just dip into a life. You can go as a viewer, or you can go as standing in the body, and it's very similar to when I do my journeys, and I go off to the beautiful places for healing or whatever. I'm still if the doorbell rings here or the phone goes or something, I'm instantly back here with my eyes open. It's just literally, it's like closing your eyes and you're somewhere else doing something else, and it's nothing to be worried about in any way. You just play about with it and have a wee bit of fun. So I hope you found that interesting, and that it's given you some things to think about, and you see if you maybe fancy trying a past life regression sometime or other. Go for it, I say, if you with a reputable person, or you want to try one of these tapes and give it a wee go and just see what comes up. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Right, we'll speak again soon. God bless.